back to part 2 of our favourite compilations. As Mark said in the last video, there's no numbering for this, like 10 to 1. It's just our favourite compilations. And we will be doing another video on more compilations because I pulled out so many. So I'm just going to pick up, we're just talking about our favourite ones. I'm going to start this one off for this video here. So the next compilation I've got is, I've just done a couple of videos recently, but it is one of my favourite compilations. And it is Visage, Fade to Grey, the singles collection. This came out in 1983, I believe, and this was like an in-between between the first album, which was successful with Fade to Grey and everything, and the second album that was coming out. So that's why you got things like Mind of a Toy, We Move, Tar, Fade to Grey, but also it had the Anvil, Night Train, Pleasure Boys, Damn Don't Cry, which was from the second album as well. So this is kind of bridge between them albums. Later versions of this had the Amboss, which is the German version of the Anvil, on it. But this is the original version, and when I bought this, I was obsessed. I played it so many times. I think first I had it on tape, and tape got chewed up, and I was living in Cyprus at the time, and I walked all the way down to a record shop called Top of the Pops. You probably heard me talk about it a few times.
I think you have, yeah.
And they had this on vinyl, and I just remember going back and just playing this again and again. So this is the original vinyl from back then, so I would have been 1983, I was right. 83, so I was just 12 at a particular time. So this is definitely the original one. It's falling apart now.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I was saying, some of the videos that I've done is I've had to buy the reissues because my copies are so battered. And one of the things I said was, you know, great, if they're battered, great. You know, you're using them. You know, it's a timestamp. You know, for instance, like this little thing at the top here, I probably did that when I was, 13 years old by mistake. So embrace those crooked copies of your records that you've got. Like, this is all falling apart, the glue's all gone and everything. But an introduction to Visage, instead of collecting all the vinyl, all the albums and stuff, if you've got this compilation, you've got all the hits basically. Everything on here is just incredible, and it's got the 12-inch version of Fade to Grey, which was previously unreleased, because the single had come out. So this is a previously unreleased version, but they strip it down just that little bit more. You've also got the We Move remix, which is previously unreleased as well, and it kind of came out later on. It's a 12-inch, but yeah, brilliant. I love it. It's just a great compilation. That's Visage, Fade to Grey, the singles collection.
So, as I previously mentioned at the end of last episode, I sort of have that aggro, early 2000s drum and bass. This is the sort of opposite direction for drum and bass, but same sort of era. So this is a 2001 compilation, and it's Plastic Surgery Part 2. So this is Hospital Records. They were formed in 1996, I believe, by Tony Coleman, probably better known as London Electricity. So, songs like Just 1 Second and stuff like that. Everybody knows that sort of stuff. But yeah, this is like a cool highlight of artists that would kind of go on to be quite big, obviously including himself. He's putting together a compilation. He's going to put a couple of his own tracks on. But I mean, Hospital Records, they, over the years, they're still going. They've released stuff from Rezo, Netsky, Royalston has been on there, and they've got the sub labels, like they've got Med School, which has some really, really cool like liquid drum and bass on there. But this is a really interesting compilation. Unfortunately, even though it's a 4-disc set, the CD version has more tracks on it, and the sort of second kind of disc of the CD is kind of like a long continuous mix put together, which is really cool. But this is a lovely set to have. Amazing tracks on here in particular. You've got Wishing Well by London Electricity, but the Danny Bird remix, that's so jazzy, so cool sounding, a lot like Brown Paper Bag and stuff like that. Similar sort of vibe, and like stuff like Jagger Jazzist and stuff would also fit within that sort of sound. What else? You've got Total Science, Let It Go. That's another great track. I think that's got the Life Could drum sample on that. I think it's Life Could. It might not be, but it's got a very similar sound to it. So that's a little bit more aggressive than the rest of the tracks on here, but that's a really, really worthwhile song to listen to. Very interesting mix on that track in particular. It's quite quite a dense sounding mix. Like a lot of this sort of liquid sound is very airy, very reverby, very kind of like clean, and that it's like it's the genre, but using assuming it is the Life Could break. It's using a break that wouldn't really fit in the genre normally, and it's like with a mix that's very dense and kind of like hard pushing, but with the music from this genre. So I like that approach to it. As I say, it's 4 discs, so you're kind of getting your money's worth in terms of physical content, and they're nice and thick. They're fucking heavy. Really, really lovely sort of put together mix, and kind of like a nice highlight of, as I say, stuff that would then go on to be, or artists that would go on to be quite big in their own right in the sort of coming years. Really good sort of snapshot of where Hospital Records were at, sort of just as they were kind of getting a little bit more publicly known. Obviously, this is the second compilation, but coming on from here, they sort of picked up more and more artists and did bigger and bigger things. So this is like a nice sort of start of the peak for them, I think. Yeah.
Because where I lived in London, it's just up from Shoreditch, and used to have a club there called Herbal. I remember Hospital Records forever doing nights there. I used to hear the Hospital Records name again and again and again. But I know that's a big label, but yeah, Herbal is no longer there. Used to do loads of drum and bass nights there. Cool. So my next one is a compilation that came out in 1985. And it's Depeche Mode, the singles, 81 to 85. I have no idea who this is. When I originally bought it, I bought it on, because CD was out then. So I bought it on CD. And I didn't pick this vinyl up till maybe 20 years ago. So I think I got a second-hand shot, but it's got someone's name on it. I don't know who it is. I just seen it. I thought, I better have that on vinyl.
Looks like it says like
H.
High Life or something, maybe? Or
Hey Sharif or something like that.
Yeah.
So I've got no idea. I don't want to take it off because I'm going to ruin the cover. It's got this little sticker here. I think I might have picked it up in Germany, actually. They've got loads of second-hand good record shops, but it's definitely the original press on here. And now, even though this is like 81 to 85, Vince Clarke did most of that stuff, and yet he's nowhere on the sleeve. You've got Alan Wilder on the sleeve as well, which I think was probably like a fingers up to Vince Clarke. But inside, I don't think there's there's loads of pictures of the touring they used to do, and there's not one picture of Vince Clarke in here. Yet he was part of the band when they first started. The biggest hits up to this point, because obviously things like New Life and things, they hadn't really had any hits after the Vince Clarke era until the late 80s. So I do think that was a bit of a fingers up to Vince Clarke. So this came out 85 on Mute Records, which is one of my favourite record labels. And if you want an introduction to Depeche Mode, this is it, this compilation here. There's been loads of other compilations coming out, but to me this is the one, really. It's got all the kind of big hits on it. When I say big hits, a couple of here, I don't even know what they are. People Are People, Master Servant, it's called A Heart. But saying, I think Alan Wilder was involved in People Are People, Master Servant. But most is like Just Can't Get Enough. It's a great track. So just realising that Alan Wilder did do most of these tracks and not Vince Clarke. But I still think there's a fingers up to Vince Clarke because he's not on the inside sleeve. People Are People, Massive Servant, it's called A Heart, Just Can't Get Enough, See You, Shake the Disease, Everything Counts, New Life. So it's all their kind of big hits between 81 and 85. So it's a great introduction to Depeche Mode. As I said, the inside fold-out sleeve has got some great pictures of them on tour as well. But the inside sleeve is really good. I kind of love this because what they've done, because it's a singles, they've shown all the single artwork and a bit of explanation on the release, how well it did, sort of the singles that are involved in that, and then also the albums they'd released up to that point as well. And I thought that's quite good. Not many artists do that, and you can get Posh Clobber supposedly on the inside as well. So obviously there's their kind of fan club. But it's a great introduction to Depeche Mode. Don't know much about Depeche Mode. This is probably the compilation to go for. And that's Depeche Mode, the singles 81 to 85 on Mute.
So for my next one, we've got Missed Beats. This is from the label Black on Black Records. It's been compiled by Sav Remzi, is his name, and Dr. Bob Jones. So Dr. Bob Jones is he's like a music historian now, but he was a
But you used to run the show, was it?
It was
Not Whistle Test.
no. I think I've got it here actually. To be honest, Totally Wired.
Yeah.
He was on, and Sav Ramsey was on. He did like stuff for XFM and all kinds of stuff. Like he's like a music advisor for like brands like Virgin and Mazda and stuff. Like he's done a load of stuff. He's basically like marketing for music. But this is a really cool little compilation. I think there's actually a little slip in here. I won't show the whole thing because there is a telephone number on it.
Oh, nice.
But you've got like a little write-up about like sort of their reasoning for doing it. So I'll just read a couple of bits of it. So Dr. Bob Jones, world famous DJ, producer and keeper of the groove, gathered together 10 of the world's most elusive examples of 90s street beats and made them available under the title Missed Beats on his own Black on Black records. So yeah, it's essentially their way of compiling some really rare tracks that they want to highlight. Again, you know, like a lot of these things that I've picked out, it's where artists want to, or where DJs want to kind of showcase stuff that they think is really cool and that needs to be heard more. But I love that this is in here, just like a little justification, a little story behind it. Same with like that Belgrade's Burning one, like just a little bit more of like a personal, like here's why we did it, here's the sort of justification behind it, and out just kind of showing the passion. So for me, the standout tracks on this one, it's quite hard to read because it's
it's
like
really
light
small.
green or light orange on like a green, and it doesn't stand out. But yeah, Don Carlos Aqua Part 2, that's a very cool track. That's kind of got some PCM samples in there. The bass is very obviously a sampled bass. Like they don't even try and hide it, which I really like. You know, as I've mentioned tons of times in the past, I love that synthesized fake sound of some things.
Yeah.
And that has it in spades. And what was the other one? LTJ Experience Free Tune. That's kind of really cool, like free jazzy kind of roadsy kind of song. Again, this is like another one where you could pull some really cool beats out of it. You could get some really good samples from here, even though some of these things have been sampled themselves. A really lovely sort of highlight of some older tracks. You know, this is when was it released? 1995. And then you've got tracks from the early 90s, like 91, 92, 93, just kind of like highlighting that era of stuff up until then. And then you've got these big write-ups on the end, like thanks, obviously, there. And then you've got this like big part here. I'm not going to read it because I can barely see it. But as before, this has got like why they chose things and just like the story behind it. And that for me is like what I really love about compilations. It's not necessarily about like having the highest quality or anything like that. It's like someone who's just passionate about these songs and they really want them to be heard by as many people as possible. So that's a really, really nice bundle of tracks there.
Nice.
Lovely.
Yeah, 95 was a good year. My next compilation is, you probably heard me talk about it, is one of what I call the Holy Trinity, okay, which is Adam and the Ants, Bow Wow Wow and Culture Club. Yeah. This is a compilation from Bow Wow Wow. It came out in 1982. And this is to really, they released this to kind of capitalise on the fact that I Want Candy had just done really well. And they've just re-released Louis XIV, which is doing really well. So this was to capitalise on that. And obviously at the particular time, Bow Wow doing a lot of kind of TV performances. And this image here is actually from a show called Razzmatazz that I used to watch. And again, you probably heard me talk about often the clothes they wore. Obviously, they were dressed by Michael McLaren and Vivienne Westwood. So they created a whole collection called the Pirate Collection for Bow Wow Wow to wear, which I've extensively collected. And I've got all the original, because around about this time, my mother actually picked me up a pirate shirt from Kingston. We were living in Cyprus at the time. Picked me up a pirate shirt and I wore it till it was almost threadbare. But this compilation is so good. I mean, I'm buying it on tape first. It's been signed by Dave Barbarossa, because obviously I managed him for a couple of years. Dave Barbarossa is this guy here, the drummer. It's a good compilation. Again, it's a good because it had a couple of releases, like things like album-wise, they'd released the album, but it was banned because of the cover, which you've obviously heard me talk about before. And they had I Want Candy, you had Go Wild and Country, big hits. So this is a collection, a good kind of insight into your first foray into like Bow Wow Wow and their sound. I mean, there's some great stuff on here like Fools Rush In, I Want Candy, Louis XIV's, Mile High Club, which is a great one. A little bit of knowledge I have about Mile High Club. That was actually because Boy George was in Bow Wow Wow for a short period of time, loaned his Lieutenant Lush, and he used to sing on the Mile High Club, but they got rid of him in the end. So it's a good kind of insight into Bow Wow Wow, and obviously we know this image, which is the cover of I Want Candy. But it's a great compilation, 16 tracks, love it. I do like the artwork because I do remember this show, the classic Bow Wow Wow logo. So it's a good insight into it. And also this photo here of the gold teeth was actually up in World's End, which is the first ever Vivian Westwood shop in Kings Road. The original photo, this was in a frame, and it had been there for years, and it's still there now, this photo, original photo. There you go.
Nice.
Bow Wow Wow, I Want Candy, the compilation from 1982. Mark.
Excellent. So this one here, I'm really going to butcher the names on this one. This is all Japanese tracks by Japanese artists. It's compiled by DJ Muro, King of Digging, as he calls himself.
Or BBE, I've got loads of stuff on that label. Great disco compilations on that as well.
Yeah, so this is like sort of joint distributed by Diggers Dozen and Barely Breaking Even, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
I think, from what I can gather, it's a 2022 release. It's a compilation of basically just 70s jazz funk and that sort of stuff from Japanese artists. From what I can gather, this is basically pretty much like a snapshot of one of his radio shows. He hosts a show on Tokyo FM, and it's all vinyl that he plays. And from what I can gather, this is basically like one sort of like continuous play that he did for an episode. But there's some of the tracks on here, again, like shit that like no one has ever heard of. But, you know, obviously he's the king of digging. He can find this stuff. Really, really cool, well-highlighted tracks. There's a few bits and pieces where the same names pop up quite often. You've got Kifu Mitsuhashi, who I believe is a shakuhachi player. It's like a long Japanese sort of flute type thing. And it, you know, would traditionally be used in kind of like that traditional folk music, but oh man, it goes so well with this kind of jazzy sort of stuff. There's loads of really well put together bass driven tracks, but with that flute on top, and it sounds amazing. And Kiyoshi Yamaya, he is again on these tracks, and they share a lot of the tracks here. And then there's a couple where Kiyoshi is clearly like the band leader for larger groups. And all of them just sound amazing. They do kind of like blend into one long track because they are quite free form. But it's a really amazing sort of highlight of that sound that I've kind of like talked about in the past, that kind of like Japanese jazz, where it's a little bit left field of what you would expect from Western jazz. Obviously, it's a free form genre anyway, but it just sounds just that little bit more interesting, at least to my ears. But yeah, the cover itself is phenomenal.
Nice.
I fucking love that Obi strip and everything. And then you've got the fold out as well.
Nice.
Tons and tons of information. You know, you've essentially got like a big, long sort of diatribe there about how it started, what it's all about. I really, really love the presentation of this. It's just a phenomenal little package.
I normally find the Japanese releases, they really put a lot of effort into it.
Oh yeah,
and I love the Obi strips on them. I've got like the Adamant stuff, the Bow Wow stuff, and they always have different covers.
Yeah.
Compared to like the European releases, and 9 times out of 10 they're better.
Yeah.
No, they're definitely better. And obviously with Japan, people tend to release different stuff in Japan what they do in Europe as well. So
yeah, 100%.
I love the Japanese versions. They do pay attention to detail.
Yeah, it's got this sort of because it's from the 70s. it's got this sort of sound that you could almost expect in like a kind of like detective movie or something like that. But it's, as I say, it's got that kind of Japanese kind of approach to it. There's a slightly different kind of feel to the compositions. You can tell that everybody involved in it is like truly at the top of their game. Like it's so well played. It's so like true sounding. It like unreal stuff. As for the tracks in particular to check out, I would just say like the first two sides are amazing. But Oso-Rizan by Kiyoshi Yamaya and the Contemporary Sound Orchestra, that's really a phenomenal track. And any of the ones with Kifu Mitsuhashi, like his flute playing stuff on there, like works so perfectly. It's not quite the same as a regular flute. It doesn't have quite the same tonality. It's got a sort of bigger, more epic sound, but it's not like overcrowding, it's not overbearing, it doesn't take over the track, it just adds a different vibe to it. Really love it.
It sounds like something you'd find like a Mowax, like DJ Crush or that kind of vibe. We're going to be doing a Mowax label showcase at some point. Cool, nice. So my next one is, I just realised a lot of these compilations that I'm showing are kind of forays into like particular bands. If you want a particular band you want to learn, instead of trying to buy all the different albums, just get these particular compilations. It's a good kind of overview of what the band is about. This next album, again, I've just done a video with these. It's one of my favourite bands, and again, this compilation's done really well. And it's Cure, Standing on a Beach, and this came out in 1986. And again, all the singles up to that point were brilliant. I mean, I'm a massive fan of The Cure, but this was such a great compilation. And I just love the fact they just used this random old guy for the cover, which is brilliant. And I just remember at the time, there was this... he was famous because of this. I remember finding out a little bit about him. And he's not a model or somebody who... just a random photo from the photographer, and they used this for the cover. And that's one of the things I kind of like about The Cure, is they're not interested in plastering themselves all over the sleeves, and this is so a famous iconic sleeve now because of this. I don't know where he is. He's probably dead now.
Yeah, he does look like fairly old.
He looks pretty old there already. Again, the inside, and I love what they did here. They got all the sleeves on their singles that make up this, and they've thrown it in the water on a beach, which is brilliant. And some of these are really iconic kind of sleeves. I mean, you've got things like The Walk, The Love Cats, A Forest, Close to Me. So it's a good kind of overview of like really early Cure going on to their more popular stuff. I mean, Killing an Arab, I mean, that song is no longer available, Killing an Arab now. It's been taken off all the streamers now. On the repress of this, it's not available on here, Killing an Arab. I mean, understandable. But you've got things like Boys Don't Cry, Jumping Someone Else's Train, Forest, Primary, Charlotte Sometimes, Let's Go to Bed. The Walk is one of my all-time favourite Cure records because it's so kind of electro. Brilliant. Love Cats, brilliant. Caterpillar. In Between Days, Close to Me, I wasn't so keen on. They were a bit poppy for me. But as an introduction to an iconic band, it's this compilation.
Yeah.
It's Standing on a Beach. And I think most people have this compilation. This is the repress. I think this is a repress that came out a few years ago. Because it's too good a condition for my original. Maybe my original disappeared. But on the inside, again, what I've noticed is it's definitely a repress because the vinyl's so thick.
Yeah, super heavy.
It's so thick. The inside sleeve, just some fish. I suppose it's a whole beach themed. But it's a great compilation. If you see it, definitely pick it up. Pick up the CD, pick up digital, whatever it is. But this is a good kind of introduction to The Cure. I'm not sure what track they replaced Killing an Arab with. But yeah, great compilation. Mark.
So next up, this is my first like proper artist highlight compilation. This is Eternal Youth by Rollo Tomasi. I've spoken about them, I think, possibly twice. I might have featured two of their albums. I know I featured one in the album covers countdown. I might have had one in my top 20. I can't remember now. But I've spoken about them several times. So they're like a mathcore band, very sort of aggro-aggressive kind of sound, like kind of techie hardcore punk, but with like weird indie sort
Okay.
of kind of approach as well. This is pretty much kind of it's put up by Holy Raw Records, I believe, in 2011. This is kind of like a summation of all of the kind of special editions, the random singles and 7-inches that they did from about 2008, 2009 through to 2011. Unfortunately, it doesn't have some of the tracks that the CD version has. This is a big compilation, but there's
A lot of tracks on it. I was going to say, a lot of
yeah,
tracks.
we've got 28 tracks on here. The CD version has something like 36. And the CD version has a couple of remixes from their first album, which are really awesome. They kind of, those remixes like fully reinvent those tracks because there's tracks that are like hyper aggressive that they managed to work into like long ambient pieces. But this is a really cool kind of, again, snapshot of where they were at that sort of era before they, you know, they still have the same sound even now, but it's a lot more refined. It's a lot more cleaner in terms of the production. This has got a real, like, aggressive, hardcore DIY feel to it. Some of this stuff, like, the sort of layout of this album is kind of like a load of long tracks, like Mount Celestia, the first track, I think it's like 7-8 minutes long. And, like, for such a hardcore band, like, that's a long track. You know, you get these sort of, like, kind of like punky and like mathy sort of bands. Normally they like maybe last a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
But like these first few songs, they are long tracks. And granted, yeah, they're studio versions, so chances are they were punching in bits and pieces as they were going along. But like they have performed some of this stuff live, and like the kind of endurance to kind of be able to put that stuff out all in one go, one performance is impressive. And then like the middle bit, got a load of tracks that are like maybe a minute long. I think there's one on here that's like 38 seconds. It's tons of little bits, and it's kind of, that's how they've pieced it together. They've got big tracks, little tracks, and then the end is kind of like remixes and acoustic versions and stuff. I believe the sort of only real single from this was the only song that was kind of made for the album, which is Fuck the Pleasantries, Let's Rock. Which is kind of like a response to one of their older songs, which is called Rock the Pleasantries, Let's Fuck. So they just switched those two words around. Tons of cool tracks on here. You've got another sort of two-piece, which is Film Noir and the tentatively titled Film Noir, which are two separate tracks. It's a lot more, as I say, aggressive and unclean than what they put on their albums. As far as like era goes, this would have been between their albums Astrea and Cosmology, I think, which like that was a very definite progression. You could hear them going more into like adding more electronica and like ambient passages to their stuff, and this kind of is almost their kind of way of kind of ditching some of the rougher aspects of their stuff. Like it's a I guess an aesthetic choice that perhaps some people might not have preferred. Perhaps they like their earlier stuff more. For me, like I think they've been at the top of their game for the past like 5-6 years. That's really where they've kind of excelled.
Are they still going now?
Still going now, yeah. Still kicking around. They're not with Holy Raw anymore. Holy Raw, I don't know if they're defunct or not anymore, but there were sort of allegations of the record label or of the owner, and like I know that Rolo Tomassi, they left the label immediately when that sort of stuff came out. So I'd imagine the label themselves aren't going anymore. But at least for the time, you know, allegations aside, like this is a really cool, like almost like a demo tape in a way of just like loads of random bits and pieces, collected stuff from that era. And, you know, I'm quite surprised some of these things like did end up as full releases because they are quite rough. We're talking some things like you can tell they're almost like one of the band members probably just like recorded the whole lot on a computer and then maybe sent it off for Eva the vocalist to chuck her vocals on, and that was like just like a demo track, and they've just added that on. But it is a nice one to have. It's not the cheapest thing. I mean, I got this years and years ago, and it wasn't that cheap then, and like their stuff isn't super easy to get hold of, and obviously Holy Raw doesn't exist anymore as far as I'm aware, so it ain't getting repressed. But nice fold out as well, cool. For all three parts.
They look really young, actually, man.
Oh yeah, they are. Like when they, I think they sort of formed in like 2005, 2006, maybe
Right.
a little bit earlier. But like they were, I think they're pretty much my age, and like 2005, 2006, I certainly wasn't in any place to be touring and releasing music, but apparently they were. But yeah, I love the presentation of this. Just an excellent little three-way fold. Fantastic band, as I say. They're worth checking out even now. All of their stuff, for me, has been like a really great journey into that sort of genre of music, especially when their first album came out. Like, I had zero interest in heavy music. I had zero interest in screaming in music, and this is like so in your face. It just, blows your head off, and it, in a way, it's not accessible at all, but I kind of love it for that. So yeah, if you find this cheap, I'd say even if you're not into them, just like pick it up, because
anyway.
It's probably going to just go up and up and up in price. Like it's such a nice quality piece. Like, yeah, just get it.
Fire. I like that. I like the fact that it was so young, because yeah, you're right. You think, God, you're so young. What was it doing then? Like at Duran Duran, when they first started, they were like 16, 17. It's like I never thought of like, yeah, I could be in a band at 16, 17.
I think perhaps that's sort of part of why there is such appeal. Because they're so young, they don't know the rules.
Yeah.
So they're breaking them all because they don't know that they exist. And
yeah,
like now, like you listen to some people and you're just like, they're doing the exact thing that they think they're supposed to do because everybody else is doing it. But like that, for the time when they first sort of started, yeah, there was like math rock and stuff. Dillinger Escape Plan had been around for probably 8-9 years at the time, but even then, like, this is so unaccessible, and to put that out with such confidence in their sort of late teens and 20s, like, love that. Fantastic.
Cool. Well, my next compilation, this came out in 1982, and up to this point, there wasn't really that many, other than like band compilations, like, the greatest hits. And there used to be a company called K-Tel. Do you remember about a company called K-Tel? They used to be the king of compilations, and they were god awful. I still remember buying compilations of like, the Beatles, and they think, oh, it sounds really different. And what they used to do is get people in to re-sing the songs and release the compilations. Yeah. So K-Tel used to do, and the covers were just like hideous. So up to that point, that was my kind of foray into like compilations, other than kind of band compilations. I think Queen had one and stuff. So it was the first incarnation of Now That's What I Call Music, which came out in 1982. One thing, especially the early kind of Now compilations, they were like snapshots of my life I was just going through. And one has always been my kind of favourite, because there was a few tracks on here that hadn't actually been released when this first came out, that actually got released as hits. I mean, at the time I was a massive like Culture Club fan, Kajagoogoo, Howard Jones. I just loved all these bands. When they first put out a bit of the story about this, when they first put this together, Kajagoogoo, Lamar was the lead singer, but just before this came out, he got sacked and released his single, his own single, and they had to change the artwork. And with Culture Club, they wanted Karma Chameleon on here. But the next single that was coming out of theirs was Victims, and Culture Club wanted Victims on here, even though before it was out. My original copy, I'm sure, was only on one vinyl. I can't remember on two. This is two vinyl. This is a 28 repress, because again, my original was all battered like beyond belief. And it was just a brilliant compilation. Even now, I kind of put it on, and like when you open it up, you'd get all the artists and the information about the single itself. Which is quite good. I mean, there's a couple of bollocks songs on here as well, to be honest. For instance, Phil Collins, Can't Hurry Love. You've got Bonnie Tyler, Total Eclipse of the Heart. So there was a couple of bollocks songs on here, but there's some really good stuff on here, like the Rocksteady crew. You had Mike Oldfield, Moonlight Shadow, Kajagoogoo, who I absolutely love, New Edition, Kajagoogoo again. So that was when they split up, and that was their first single after splitting up. Howard Jones, Human League, brilliant, love that song. And this is Culture Club, Victims. So it doesn't even show, it's going to be number one by the time you have this. So there you go, almost certainly number one by the time you have this album. So it shows you, it's on here knowing that this was going to hit number one, because it had this one. Cure, Love Cat. So it's a good snapshot of what was going on in 1982, and I think it's a compilation that everyone should have because it goes right across the board, and like all these top bands at a particular time. Remember at this time as well, you had Band Aid coming out as well, and all these particular bands. So this is a compilation I do kind of have a little sing along and a wig out to every now and again, and I'd bar a couple of tracks. It's a brilliant little compilation.
Yeah, sure.
I did like Now up until about 6, and then beyond after that I wasn't a big fan. Rubbish. But the first 6, including this one, is definitely the best.
Yeah, they definitely
Now.
cranked them out in the 90s, didn't they? I remember like what, 2000, 2001, they were in like the 40s or 50s already.
Yeah.
Like that's it, an insane way to go. And obviously, you know, you want to highlight the charts, but yeah, like we've said it before in the past, but like 82, 83, like those are fucking stacked years for music. It's insane the stuff that's
what they
coming out.
did over the last few years, I've been collecting them. They've been releasing Now 1980,
Oh yeah.
and Now 1981, 82, 83, 84. So I've got all of them on vinyl as well. So they, you know, from that particular year. So this is like over a couple of years really.
I bet that 83 one's insane.
Brilliant, man.
Yeah.
So 81, 82 and 84, all them four are just insane. Some really good bits. But again, with the vinyl, it came out double vinyl, but the CDs always had other
Extra stuff.
tracks on it that weren't that big a hits, but they were, you know, we still loved them. But that is definitely a compilation because a lot of these bands absolutely loved it. It was a massive compilation for them. And I think they got it right with this as well. Whoever's picking the tracks for this compilation, definitely bang on. Other than Phil Collins and Bonnie Tyler. They did a good job.
Amazing. Cool. So for my final one this video, we've got Distant Worlds 3, or Part 3 if you want.
Nice.
It's a compilation of tracks from Final Fantasy, the series, the video game series. So this for me is like musically, this is kind of not my first experience of music, obviously, because like I didn't play these until like sort of 1997, 1998. But as far as an appreciation of music, this is kind of the first time where I listened to stuff that wasn't things I'd heard from my parents. You know, I would have been, 9, 10 at the time. The tracks on this, it's all essentially based off of a series of concerts that they've done over the years, the Distant Worlds touring, which is basically just compilations of music from the games, which they've then done like full live orchestrations of, all or mostly composed by Nobuo Uematsu, who was like essentially the long-time composer for the Final Fantasy series, all the way from the first one up until the 9th one. He composed every song in it, and then from 10 onwards, he sort of stepped away from the company, and he was sort of doing fewer and fewer tracks. 10, he does have a lot of tracks on. And then from there, I think he like actually left Square or Squaresoft, Square Enix, whatever you want to call them now, the company, and he went freelance, but he still worked with them on a fairly regular basis. And as I say, this is kind of like a highlight of a lot of his tracks. The whole series is a highlight of a lot of his tracks. I think we're at 6 or 7 in the series, and there's also 2 albums which highlight individual games. It's sort of like compilations from compilations almost. Right. But this for me is my favourite one because of the medleys that are on here. So I won't delve too much into the games themselves. Like if you're familiar with the games, you know how good they are. But you've got tracks on here from Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy VI, one from Final Fantasy V as well, I believe, or it's a boss battle theme that kind of includes stuff from Final Fantasy V. But this is sort of the latter half of the series up until Nobuo left, and then a couple of tracks from after when he left. In terms of highlighting tracks, number 1, Hymn of the Faith, The Sending, that's from Final Fantasy X. So he did a lot of motifs or leitmotifs in his music. So like you'd have stuff that thematically would call back to previous tracks in the soundtrack. And he was really good at placing that sort of thing in there. And in Hymn of the Faith, in the game, it's basically these different areas, and they've all got these sort of choral things. But this is a compilation of each one, with different vocalists, and it sounds really, really phenomenal. Like each one gets like a sort of about a minute long snippet. It's basically the same song just presented in different ways, which I really love. That's a cool way to open it because it's so like relaxing and haunting. Track 2, the Battle and Victory theme medley. That's a little bit weird. It has a song from the 5th game in the series, which is called Clash on the Big Bridge, which is like an iconic track from the series. They really, really change it up. Like it's got the same melody, but like they make it hyper aggressive with like the orchestral stabs, like almost to the point where you can't hear what's going on. But it kind of works for a battle theme. Other stuff in here, Balam Garden / Ami, which is from Final Fantasy VIII. That track is another one of those ones where he had like a particular motif for individual characters throughout the game, and tracks that involve events with that character kind of have those same motifs reappearing. And those two songs in particular, they are essentially one and the same, just with different instrumentation. And that's a really well put together one. Probably the favourites on here, Not Alone from Final Fantasy IX and Roses of May from Final Fantasy IX. Not Alone especially. In the original game, because obviously these came out, most of the games came out in the like late 80s and 90s, or very early 2000s. A lot of it is based on, again, like Roland synthesizers and stuff like that. Like all of Final Fantasy VIII was a SC88, a Sound Canvas 88 Pro that he was using for the sounds, and like Roland JV 1080s and stuff like that. Like it's all PCM sample and Rompler sounds, but they really take the song Not Alone and like change it up. It goes from being this, what was a synthy, really digital sounding track that was still an amazing track, but a very synthesizer based track, and they slow it down. Obviously it's all orchestral, but it sounds a lot more like something that Joe Hisaishi, who did all of like the Studio Ghibli films, a lot more like what he would have done. It changes the mood entirely, but it doesn't take anything away from it. Really, really amazing approach to it. But yeah, I mean, I could gush about all of these tracks basically. But even the arrangement of the songs, like the way they've put them together, there's a real progression on this album in terms of the mood and the feel. Like you've got kind of ups and downs to, you're not getting like fatigued by like aggressive songs and then like getting bored by slow songs. It keeps you listening all the way throughout. And Answers, which is from Final Fantasy XIV, I don't believe that's Uematsu track. That might be another composer, because there are a couple from other composers. But that's a really amazing way to finish. That's like a full operatic vocal performance, and like longest track on the album as well. Even compared to the medleys, like it's longer than the medleys, but like that's a really cool way to finish off the album. So you sort of start off with a vocal piece, you end with a vocal piece. You've got lots of instrumental and fun things in here, and there are games from the series that I wasn't particularly a fan of, particularly 13. A lot of people know the sort of story behind that and how it wasn't very well received, but they did a really good job of picking tracks from that, which are really, really excellent. As I say, it's just like a fantastic highlight of such a great series of music, great series of games, and the way they've put it together, it just feels like it's done with so much care. Hopefully, one day I'll be able to go and see one of these tours. They seem to be getting more and more infrequent as he's getting older. Yeah. So hopefully they do sort of another run in the next few years, and I can kind of get the chance to see him. One final thing on it, the actual vinyl itself, really, really nice, solid blue colour on this one. It looks phenomenal, if it will come out.
That's a nice blue, yeah.
Yeah, just love how deep and rich that is. Yeah. But yeah, this series, highly recommend checking it out.
And the artwork reminds me of it's like a New Order sleeve.
Yes, yeah.
I can't remember which record it was. Reminds me of a New Order sleeve.
Yeah, love this.
Very nice. So that is the end of our favourite compilations. As I said, we didn't have in particular order. It's just our favourite compilations. We are going to be doing another one on, because there's so many compilations out there. But this should be enough to get your teeth into. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.